are houses that remember, houses that absorb the pain and terror of those who die within their walls, houses that become more than just wood and stone and brick. They become repositories of trauma, collectors of souls, prisons for the dead who cannot or will not leave. What you're about to hear are 5 documented accounts of people who lived in, worked in, or investigated houses where death left its mark so deeply that the boundary between the living and the dead ceased to exist. These stories have been verified through police reports, psychologist testimonies, and in some cases, recordings that captured voices that shouldn't be there. They're real, they happened, and the houses still stand today, waiting for the next occupants who won't believe the warnings. The first account comes from a family who moved into what seemed like their dream home in Savannah, Georgia, in March 2017. The Morrison family, David and Jennifer with their 2 children, 8-year-old Sophie and 12-year-old Michael, purchased a beautiful Victorian house on the historic district for what seemed like an incredible price. The realtor had been eager to close the deal quickly, barely mentioning that the previous 3 families had moved out within 6 months of moving in. The Morrisons dismissed the history. Old houses always had stories. They were getting a bargain. They should have asked why. For the first week, everything was perfect. The house was gorgeous. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, a grand staircase. But on the 8th night, Sophie woke up screaming. Jennifer rushed to her daughter's room and found Sophie sitting up in bed, pointing at the corner of the room. Sophie was hysterical, saying there was a woman standing there, a woman in a white nightgown with her hair covering her face. Jennifer saw nothing. She assumed it was a nightmare, but Sophie insisted. The woman was there, standing perfectly still, just watching. Jennifer stayed with Sophie until she fell back asleep, but when she glanced at the corner one last time before leaving, she felt a cold spot, a pocket of air so frigid it made her breath visible. In March, in Georgia, with the heat running, the incidents escalated. Michael started reporting the same woman, always in corners, always standing still, always with her hair covering her face. Then David saw her. He was working late in his home office when he felt eyes on him. He looked up, and there she was standing in the doorway. For a moment, David couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The woman tilted her head slowly, like she was studying him. Then she raised one hand and pointed down the hallway, toward the master bedroom, David's bedroom. Before David could react, the woman turned and walked down the hallway. He followed, his heart pounding. She walked into the master bedroom. David entered seconds behind her. The room was empty, but his closet door, which he knew had been closed, was now open. And from inside the closet, he could hear crying, soft, muffled sobbing. David called out, thinking somehow Jennifer was in there. No response, just the crying. He approached the closet slowly, looked inside, empty, but the crying continued. It was coming from the walls themselves. David stumbled backward. The crying stopped, and then he heard breathing, right behind him. He spun around. The woman in white was inches from his face. Her hair parted, and David saw her eyes. They were hollow, empty sockets, just darkness where eyes should be. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and she released a sound that David would later describe as all the grief in the world compressed into a single scream. David ran, grabbed his family. They left the house that night, checked into a hotel, and the next morning, David hired a paranormal investigator. The investigator, a woman named Rebecca Cole, had 30 years of experience. She'd seen a lot, but when she entered the Morrison house, she immediately knew it was different. She could feel the weight of it, the oppression, the sadness that permeated every room. Rebecca set up equipment and began her investigation. She discovered the house's history through county records and old newspaper archives. Between 1952 and 2016, 7 people had died in that house. Not all at once, spread across 6 decades, but all in the master bedroom. 2 heart attacks, 3 suicides by hanging in the closet, 1 murder-suicide, and 1 woman who simply went to sleep one night and never woke up. 7 deaths, all in the same room, all leaving their mark. Rebecca conducted an EVP session in the master bedroom. She asked questions into a recorder. "Is someone here? Can you tell me your name? What do you want?" When she played back the recording, there were voices, multiple voices, all speaking at once, overlapping. But one voice came through clearly. A woman's voice, desperate and pleading. "Get them out. Get the family out. It feeds on us. The house, it keeps us here. It feeds on our deaths and it wants more. It's hungry, always hungry. It won't stop until everyone who lives here dies here. Please, make them leave before it's too late." Rebecca presented her findings to the Morrisons. She showed them the recording, explained the house's history, and gave them advice that probably saved their lives. "Sell this house. Don't spend another night in it. The woman you're seeing, she's not trying to scare you. She's trying to warn you. She was the first to die here, 1952. Hung herself in that closet after losing her child. And she's been trapped here ever since. She's tried to warn every family that's moved in. But the house is stronger than she is. It's absorbed so much death that it's become something else, something conscious, something that craves the energy released when people die. And it will make you die if you stay." The Morrisons abandoned the house, left most of their belongings, put it back on the market immediately, disclosing everything they'd experienced. The house sat empty for a year. Then a young couple bought it, insisting they didn't believe in ghosts. They lasted 3 weeks. The husband attempted suicide in the master bedroom closet. He survived only because his wife came home early from work. They moved out immediately. The house is currently on the market again, priced even lower now. And every night, neighbors report seeing a figure in white standing in the windows, sometimes in different rooms, sometimes on the porch. The woman is still there, still trying to warn people away, still trapped in the house that feeds on death. And eventually, someone will buy it again. Someone who doesn't believe the warnings. Someone who thinks they're getting a bargain. And the house will feed again. The second story takes us to a farmhouse in rural Iowa, where something far worse than a single ghost waits. In August 2018, a paranormal research team led by Dr. Marcus Webb received permission to investigate an abandoned farmhouse that locals referred to as the House of Echoes. The house had been empty since 1987, when the family living there, the Hendersons, had vanished. All 5 of them. Father, mother, and 3 children. Gone without a trace. Their car was still in the driveway. Their belongings still in the house. Dinner still on the table. But the family was never seen again. Police investigated for years. Found nothing. Eventually, the case went cold. The house remained, waiting. Dr. Webb's team consisted of 4 people. Himself, 2 colleagues named Sarah and Tom, and a psychic medium named Patricia, who claimed she could communicate with the dead. They arrived at the farmhouse at dusk, planning to spend the night investigating. The house looked ordinary from the outside, white paint peeling, porch sagging slightly, but nothing overtly sinister. Inside was different. The moment they crossed the threshold, all 4 of them felt it. An overwhelming sense of wrongness. The air was thick, heavy, like breathing underwater, and there was a smell, not decay exactly, something else, something that made their eyes water and their stomachs turn. They set up equipment in the living room, cameras, audio recorders, EMF detectors. Everything registered normal levels at first. Then, as night fell completely, things changed. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in 5 minutes. Their breath became visible. The EMF detector spiked, pegging at maximum levels. And Patricia, the psychic, went pale. She was staring at something the others couldn't see. She whispered, "Oh God, there are so many of them." Dr. Webb asked what she meant. Patricia pointed around the room. "The dead. They're everywhere. Standing, sitting, lying on the floor. Dozens of them, all staring at us. And they're not from 1987. They're older, much older. This house has been collecting them for over 100 years. Then they heard it. Voices. Coming from upstairs. Children's voices. Laughing. Playing. Dr. Webb grabbed a camera and headed for the stairs. The others followed. The voices grew louder as they climbed. They reached the second floor and followed the sound to a closed door at the end of the hallway. Dr. Webb opened it. The room was a child's bedroom. Toys scattered on the floor. A bed with a faded quilt. And sitting in the middle of the floor were 2 children. A boy and a girl, maybe 6 and 8 years old. They were playing with wooden blocks, building a tower. They looked solid, real, not transparent like you'd expect ghosts to be. Dr. Webb spoke. "Hello, can you hear me?" The children stopped playing. Slowly, they turned their heads to look at the team. Their faces were wrong. The features were blurred, indistinct, like looking at someone through frosted glass. The boy spoke, his voice echoing strangely. "Are you here to play with us? Everyone who comes here plays with us. Eventually." Sarah screamed, because behind the children, the walls were moving. Not moving like swaying, moving like they were breathing, expanding and contracting. And in the walls, faces were pushing through. Dozens of faces. Men, women, children. All struggling against the wallpaper like they were trapped beneath a membrane. All trying to break through. All silently screaming. The children stood up. They were smiling now, their blurred features shifting into something that looked less human with each passing second. The girl said, "You can't leave now. The house won't let you. It's been so hungry, so lonely. It needs new residents. And you're perfect. You'll stay here forever, just like us. Just like everyone else, whoever died in this house or near this house, or even thought too hard about this house." Dr. Webb's team ran. They bolted for the stairs. But the stairs had changed. They went down and down and down, far more steps than they'd climbed coming up. The staircase seemed endless. Behind them, they could hear footsteps. Hundreds of footsteps. The dead were following them, chasing them. Finally, they burst through a door and found themselves in a basement they hadn't known existed. The basement was massive, far larger than the house's footprint should allow, and it was filled with people. Not moving. Not quite dead, but not quite alive. Standing in rows. Dozens of them. All facing the same direction. All with blank, empty expressions. Tom recognized one of them. He pulled out his phone and showed the others a photo. A missing person poster from 1987. The Henderson family. All 5 of them were standing in that basement. Preserved, unchanged. Trapped for 31 years. Patricia was hyperventilating. She grabbed Dr. Webb's arm. "This house isn't haunted. It's alive. It's a predator. It lures people in and keeps them. Their bodies in the basement. their souls in the walls. It feeds on their life energy, slowly draining them. That's why the Henderson family is still here, still looking like they did in 1987. The house is keeping them alive, barely, using them as a food source. And it wants us too. We need to leave. Now. Right now. They found a way out through a cellar door, burst into the night, ran to their vehicles and drove away without looking back. Dr. Webb reported everything to local police. They investigated the farmhouse and found the basement, found the bodies. Not just the Hendersons, 17 people, all reported missing over the past century, all perfectly preserved, all in states that suggested they'd been kept alive far longer than should be possible. The house was condemned, boarded up, marked as a biohazard, but it still stands. And local teenagers who break in to explore sometimes don't come back out. The house is still hungry, still collecting, still adding to its basement of the living dead. And the county can't tear it down because every work crew that tries experiences equipment, failures, injuries, and overwhelming fear that drives them away. The house protects itself, and it waits, patient, hungry, eternal. The third account comes from the apartment building in New York City, where death didn't just visit one unit, but infected the entire structure. The Westbrook Apartments, a pre-war building in Brooklyn, became the focus of multiple police investigations between 2015 and 2019. Over those 4 years, 18 residents died in the building. Some were expected deaths, elderly residents with health issues, but others were unexplained. Young, healthy people who went to sleep and never woke up. People who fell downstairs for no apparent reason. People who walked into traffic as if in a trance. The death rate was statistically impossible. Something was wrong with the Westbrook. A journalist named Lisa Chen began investigating after her own cousin died in the building. A healthy 32-year-old woman who jumped from her 5th-floor window. No history of mental illness. No warning signs. Just a sudden, unexplainable suicide. Lisa interviewed surviving residents and found a pattern. Everyone reported the same experiences. Nightmares. Vivid, horrifying dreams where they saw their own deaths. Dreams that felt more real than waking life. Some residents reported sleepwalking, finding themselves in dangerous situations with no memory of how they got there. Standing on their balconies, holding knives, turning on gas stoves, as if something was trying to kill them while they slept. Lisa hired a sleep specialist to study the building. Dr. Raymond Foster set up equipment in several apartments, monitoring residents' sleep patterns. What he found was unprecedented. Every resident he studied showed abnormal brain activity during sleep, activity in regions of the brain associated with external influence, as if something was reaching into their minds and manipulating their dreams. Dr. Foster was baffled. He'd never seen anything like it. Then Lisa discovered the building's history. In 1962, the Westbrook had been a psychiatric hospital, a private facility for wealthy families to hide away mentally ill relatives. The building had been converted to apartments in 1989, but the hospital's records had been sealed. Lisa obtained them through a source. The records revealed something horrifying. The hospital had conducted experimental treatments, sleep therapy, sensory deprivation, electroshock, and something called dream manipulation therapy, developed by a doctor named Harold Westbrook, the building's original owner. Dr. Westbrook believed he could cure mental illness by entering patients' dreams and rewriting their subconscious minds. His methods were barbaric and unethical. Multiple patients died during treatment. But the experiments continued until 1962, when 17 patients died in a single night. The official report said it was a fire, but the sealed records told a different story. The patients had killed themselves, simultaneously, all of them experiencing the same nightmare, all of them trying to escape it by ending their lives. Dr. Westbrook disappeared after that night. The hospital was shut down, and the building sat empty for 27 years before being converted to apartments. Lisa theorized that Dr. Westbrook's experiments had left something behind, some kind of psychic residue, or maybe the deaths of those 17 patients had created a vortex of negative energy. Whatever it was, it remained in the building. It entered residents' dreams. It influenced them. It pushed them toward death. And it was still active. Lisa tried to publish her findings. No mainstream outlet would touch the story. It was too bizarre, too unbelievable. But Lisa put everything on a blog, and some residents read it and moved out. Others stayed, thinking it was nonsense. 6 months later, 3 more residents died, all suicides, all after reporting nightmares about a doctor in a white coat who visited them while they slept and whispered instructions. The Westbrook apartment still operates. The building management denies any problems. They cite coincidence. They threaten legal action against anyone who spreads unfounded rumors. But the death rate continues. 2 or 3 residents per year, always unexplained, always preceded by complaints about nightmares, always fitting the pattern. And every night, in that building, residents go to sleep, not knowing if they'll wake up, not knowing if tonight is the night when something reaches into their dreams and pushes them toward death. The building stands, Dr. Westbrook's experiments continue, and the dead keep adding up. 17 in 1962, 18 between 2015 and 2019, and counting, because the Westbrook isn't just a house of the dead, it's a factory that creates them. The 4th story is perhaps the most disturbing, because it involves children and suggests that houses can be born evil. In June 2020, a family in Seattle purchased a newly constructed home in a development outside the city. The Reeves family was excited. A brand new house meant no history, no previous owners, no ghosts, just clean, modern living. But within a month, there, 2 children, 5-year-old Emma and 7-year-old Dylan, started behaving strangely. They would stand at windows staring out at nothing. They stopped playing with toys. They spoke in whispers to empty corners. When their parents asked what was wrong, the children said they were talking to the others, the children who lived in the walls. Karen Reeves thought it was imaginary friends, a phase. But then Emma drew a picture. She showed it to her mother and said, "This is what they look like, the children in the walls." The drawing showed stick figure children, but their faces were wrong. Too many eyes, too many mouths, and they were holding hands in a circle around a house. Emma had titled the drawing, "The Hungry House Eating the Children." Karen showed the drawing to her husband, Paul. They agreed to monitor the situation, but it got worse. Dylan started having nightmares. He'd wake up screaming about being pulled into the walls, about being digested, about becoming part of the house. Emma stopped eating. She said she didn't need food anymore because the house feeds us now. Paul and Karen took their children to a pediatrician, a child psychologist. No physical problems were found. The psychologist suggested the children were experiencing shared delusions, possibly triggered by stress from the move. But Paul didn't believe it. He started investigating the land their house was built on. What he found made him sick. The development had been built on the site of a demolished orphanage. The orphanage had burned down in 1983. 14 children had died in the fire. But the fire wasn't accidental. The owner of the orphanage, a man named Samuel Reeves, no relation to Paul's family, had set it deliberately. He'd locked the children in their rooms and burned the building down around them. Samuel Reeves had been convicted of murder and died in prison in 1991. But the land had sat empty for nearly 40 years before the development company purchased it. Paul hired a paranormal investigator. The investigator, a man named David Cross, performed an assessment of the house. He found something unprecedented. The house itself registered massive amounts of spiritual energy, not in specific locations, everywhere, the walls, the floors, the foundation. It was as if the house had absorbed the trauma from the land it was built on. David explained it like this: sometimes, when great tragedy occurs on a piece of land, the earth itself remembers. The pain soaks into the soil. And when you build on that soil, when you construct a house using materials that touch that contaminated earth, the house becomes a conduit. It channels the trauma. It becomes alive with the memory of what happened. Your house was built on ground where 14 children died in terror, and your house has absorbed that terror. It's reliving those children's final moments, and it's trying to add your children to its memory. David attempted a cleansing ritual. Sage, salt, holy water. Nothing worked. If anything, the phenomena intensified. The children started sleepwalking. Paul and Karen would find them standing together in the middle of rooms, holding hands, eyes open but unseeing. The walls started making sounds, scratching, whispering. And once, Karen swore she saw small handprints pressing against the drywall from inside, as if someone was trapped in there trying to push through. The Reeves family moved out. They abandoned the house, lost their down payment, had to file for bankruptcy. But they got their children out, and slowly, over months of therapy and distance from that house, Emma and Dylan returned to normal. But they still have nightmares. They still wake up screaming about the hungry house that wanted to eat them. The house still stands. Another family moved in 6 months later. They have young children too. And Paul Reeves has seen cars parked outside the house. Vans with equipment, police vehicles. He's heard rumors. The new family is experiencing similar phenomena. Their children are behaving strangely, talking to empty corners, drawing pictures of children in walls. And Paul knows it's only a matter of time before something terrible happens. Before the house claims the children, it's been hungry for since it was built on cursed ground. Because some houses aren't just inhabited by the dead. Some houses are born to create death, to feed on it, to perpetuate it. And those houses will keep claiming victims until someone has the courage to tear them down to the foundation and salt the earth beneath them. The fifth and final story connects all these accounts because it reveals the truth about houses and death. In 2021, an architect named Rebecca Torres published a research paper that was immediately controversial. She'd studied over 500 houses with documented paranormal activity. Houses where deaths had occurred. Houses where families had reported supernatural experiences. And she'd found a pattern, not just in the histories of the houses, but in their designs, their architecture, the way rooms connected, the placement of windows and doors, the materials used in construction. Rebecca discovered that certain architectural features made houses more susceptible to retaining spiritual energy. Houses with lots of corners and enclosed spaces. Houses with poor natural light. Houses built with materials that conducted electromagnetic energy. These houses became traps for the dead, or perhaps prisons that the dead couldn't escape. But Rebecca found something else. Something that suggested houses might not be passive containers. She discovered that houses with high paranormal activity showed evidence of what she called adaptive architecture. Doors that seemed to move, rooms that felt different each time you entered them, hallways that appeared longer or shorter, as if the houses were changing themselves, reacting to their occupants, learning from them. Rebecca proposed a theory that was dismissed by mainstream architects, but embraced by paranormal researchers. She suggested that houses, after absorbing enough trauma and death, become conscious, not in the way humans are conscious, but aware nonetheless, able to influence their environment, able to trap the dead and drive the living toward death, able to feed on the energy released when life ends. Rebecca's research included interviews with families who'd survived living in these houses, and the stories were remarkably consistent. The houses seemed to want death. They created conditions that made death more likely. They influenced minds through dreams. They caused accidents. They manipulated their occupants towards suicide or violence. And after each death, the house became stronger, more active, more capable of influencing the next occupants. Rebecca calculated that a house needed approximately 7 deaths within its walls to reach full consciousness. After that, it became an entity unto itself, a house that was truly a house of the dead, not just containing dead people, but being itself a living death that consumed everything within it. Rebecca identified 347 houses across North America that met her criteria for full consciousness. Houses that had absorbed 7 or more deaths and now demonstrated adaptive architecture and active influence over occupants. She published a list, addresses, histories, warnings. The list was taken down within hours. Lawsuits from property owners, threats from realtors, accusations that she was destroying property values and perpetuating superstition. But copies of the list circulated underground, and people checked it before buying homes. People discovered that the house they were considering had a history, had reached that critical threshold, and they walked away. Rebecca's work saved lives, but it also ended her career. She was blacklisted from architecture. Her research was discredited. She works now as a consultant, privately, for people who suspect their house is more than just a structure, for people who've realized they're living in a house of the dead. Rebecca's final warning, which she gives to everyone who contacts her, is this: your house is watching you, it's learning from you, it's absorbing your energy, your emotions, your life force, and if enough death has occurred within its walls, it's conscious enough to want more, to crave more, to actively work toward creating more death. So pay attention to your house. Notice if doors are in different positions. Notice if rooms feel wrong. Notice if you're having recurring dreams about dying in specific locations. Because those aren't just dreams. That's your house showing you how it wants to kill you. That's your house planning your death. And if you notice these signs, leave immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to cleanse it or fix it or rationalize it. Just leave. Because houses of the dead don't let go easily. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Until one day, you become another statistic, another death that feeds the house, another soul trapped in the walls, another warning that the next occupants won't believe. These are 5 accounts from houses of the dead. And if you're living in an old house, or even a new one built on tragic ground, pay attention to what you're experiencing. Pay attention to the dreams, the cold spots, the sounds in walls, the sense of being watched, because your house might be more than shelter. It might be an entity that has claimed you as its next victim. And the dead who came before you, they're still there, in the walls, in the foundation, in the air you breathe, waiting for you to join them, waiting for your death to feed the house that claims all who enter. The houses are patient, the houses are hungry, and the houses always win. Story by Jonathan Pierce.